Hi, Dinah here, and I'm in Hawassa, Ethiopia, and I am excited to do these shows from Ethiopia. This has been an amazing trip, but I have next to me a lady who, she sort of looks like a sweet grandma because, well, she is a sweet grandma. How my grandkids? Two. So she is that, but what you're looking at is a veritable powerhouse. She's a woman who said to God, yes, I'll go, and why can't we do that? She's a woman who has created ministries in Ethiopia from, when did you first come?
2007.
2007, that's not that long ago. And from when you came in 2007, what made you decide on Ethiopia?
Well, a friend asked me to accompany her to be a companion on a trip and was going to pay all my expenses. And I thought, well, I'm always up for an adventure. Why not? And that's how I ended up here. But God sovereignly had me here for a reason and very clearly made his plans known to me that he wanted me to start working with women and children very similarly to how I was already working in the United States. And so from there, it just grew. And the thing is, with God, all you have to do is just say yes. I am not particularly gifted or qualified to do anything. But when you put yourself in the hands of God, he can just do it all. And it's just such an adventure to follow him. And we've been on a few.
I tell Joy, we know how God works. It's like we get an idea, and we know it's of the Lord, so he clears the path and we run after him.
Yeah, we just run. And I always say, I just am running hard to keep up with God.
Yeah, and the doors he opens. Yeah. And Joy has, she has an orphanage. She used to have like four. And actually, three of our grandsons were from the orphanage. So were adopted by two of my children. But tell us a little bit about the babies that were in your orphanage and are in your orphanage now.
Well, all the babies in our orphanage now are all found abandoned. And they're placed there by the Ministry of Women's Affairs or the police. And the objective in our orphanages is that every one of these children will be adopted into Christian Ethiopian families.
I got to tell a story on you. Okay, because Ethiopia adoption is not culturally. I remember when I first came and you said they didn't even have a word for it. Yeah, it is not a concept.
It's countercultural.
And then they were doing adoptions, out of country adoptions, and we were blessed 3 times, but that closed down. And so I said, Joy, what are you going to do with these babies? Because adoption is not part of the culture, but there's still going to be abandoned babies. And she just looked at me and said, I'm going to change the culture. And she has. Tell me about your adoption
not just
program.
Me, but we have changed the culture.
God has placed in your life incredible help, but you are the one from the top who says, we're going to change the culture. So how'd you change the culture?
Well, we did it mainly through adoption seminars that we targeted the Christian communities and the leaders, pastors, and put on adoption seminars and really raise the awareness of the need of the orphans in your own backyard, as well as God's word, which in the word isn't in the Ethiopian Bible. The word adoption is not in the Ethiopian Bible. It is not translated that way. And so it was just raising awareness and giving education of God's heart for adoption. And the Christian community, I have to say, I was blown out of my mind that they have really grabbed on to what adoption means and have stepped up, and we just don't have any trouble adopting our children to Christian couples here in Ethiopia.
Tell us just one story that of a placement of a baby.
Oh gosh, there's so many. Well, just recently we placed a little baby girl into a family who had been trying for 20 years to conceive. I don't know why they waited so long, but I think they just heard about adoptions recently. And they heard about it from their pastor who attended one of our adoption conferences. And so they came to our orphanage, and well, first they went through all the paperwork. They have to have a home study and, you know, all of that, medical examinations and criminal background checks and all like that. So they got themselves ready to adopt, and then came to our orphanage and just fell in love, of course, with the special one that God had picked out for them. And they adopted a little baby girl, and they are over the moon excited to be parents, and to be parents specifically for this little girl. And we have had such good success with adoptions here in Ethiopia. I visit adoptive families every time I come, and they are as excited as any adoptive parents I've ever worked with. And I ran an adoption agency in the United States for decades, and so I've worked with a lot of adoptive families. And the adoptive families here in Ethiopia are not one bit different than they are in the United States. They love, love, love their adopted children and are just thrilled with adoption.
That is so awesome. That's just one thing she does. Also, a heart for just people coming to Jesus in Ethiopia, out of Islam. And so you started all the programs, church planting programs that Ababa oversees, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, yes. Yep, we started with one Muslim village in a little dusty savannah area, and from there we've planted 18 churches.
18 churches. And that's Gutamuma, right?
Gutamuma was the first.
And when Mike and I first came and visited, Ababa, who is her assistant here on the ground, and he had told us about Gutamuma, and he had been working for 7 years, and going and just talking and talking to the head mosque leaders, and just sitting and eating with them and sharing. And then in the year we came, which was the 7th year, there were about 120 families. Yeah, well, actually, there had not been one convert in 7 years. And then in that particular year, 2010, it was just like the stronghold had been broken over this village. And in 1 year, 75 families came to Christ. And that, I mean, imagine, Baba was so faithful. For 7 years, he went and talked and shared. And so that was the year Mike and I came. Yeah. And so when we came, you were going to show us the sights, remember, of Addis Ababa?
Yeah, a little fluff.
A little fluff. Well, I don't do fluff well. You know that about me now.
Now I do.
So anyway, so we said, we want to see Gutamuma. And so Mike and I went with them. Oh, Ababa was delighted.
Oh, yes.
And so we went, and they worshiped under a tree. They had a worship tree. And we went to one of their services, and the ladies walked out, and it was the worship team under the worship tree. And and they had the kids section where I always said Bible thumping had a whole new meaning, because they sort of thumped the kids to keep them in line. And instead of a stick, the guy used his Bible, whap! And to keep the kids in line. Anyway, we fell in love with Gutamuma. And so Mike and I got very involved in the building of the church. We were there when it was dedicated. Mike addressed the congregation when it was dedicated. And oh my gosh, it has, in fact, we're going to go visit it. And it's something that is forever in my heart, is Gutamuma and the Christians there. And it's very challenging now, I understand.
Very, very challenging. It used to be a more moderate Muslim community, but it has recently become quite radicalized. And so we're really facing an uphill battle right now there.
And they have been attacked by a mob once, but they have kindergartens. You've started schools. Oh, she started schools too. you have the kindergartens there, but it's for the kids in the community.
Yes.
And so they're Muslim children who come, and the leaders recommend the poorest of the poor
Yes.
to come. And I'll never forget, they have a bread with the egg baked in it for the protein and the carbs, and then they have a glass of milk. And remember the little girl who spilled her milk, and she was stricken. And they did fill her glass of milk again, but it just broke my heart because it's like gold to them. Anyway, and so when they came, tell us about it. When they came, the mob came at Gutamuma.
Yes, this was there's a ethnic group called, a short term is that they're Oromo separatists, and they're a militant Muslim group of young men who want to destabilize the government. And so they have done a good job of that, actually, and have really intimidated the people. But they're a violent mob, and they've done a lot of damage in this area, the Oromo area of Shashamene, Zawai, and Gutamuma is a village outside of Zawai, Ethiopia, if you know where that is. But a mob of these men came to Gutamuma with torches and machetes and bent on doing damage to the Christian compound. And they were met at the gate by the villagers themselves, who stood there and says, "Do not touch this place, it is ours." They educate our children, they feed us, and they are good people. Do not touch this place. And these were not just the Christians from the village. These were Muslim people, and they stood there at the gates and they said, "Do not touch this place." And the mob did spare us from any damage that they would have done. And so we just really, when I was called and told and heard that story, it was just, God's hand was there to protect us. We have since built a training center there because we're building so many churches, and they're all from Muslim culture. And so we know we have to raise leaders and specifically pastors to pastor these churches. Right now, our missionaries are kind of doing a double role there, but they're in their heart, they're missionaries. And so we do establish these churches, and then we want trained pastors to come in and really run the church well. And so we built a training center there that we will bring in about 20 to 25 leaders. Every 3 months, they will be there for 2 weeks, for 2 years. And this is our way to really ensure that these churches are stabilized and have a long-term stability. So I'm really excited about that.
There have been a lot of other things that she does, supporting widows and orphans, and I mean, that's her life. This woman amazes me. I am so honored and humbled to call you friend. And together, this lady, she and I, we start talking.
Watch out.